is Terry Bradshaw, quarterback. Pittsburgh Steelers.
It's 7:15. There's a new home run champion of all time, and it's Henry Aaron.
This is baseball, Major League Baseball. And this is
ABC's Monday Night Baseball, live from Fenway Park in Boston, Massachusetts.
Looking. He's under the gun. He's tied. He throws. It is.
Touchdown! Oh, my! Victory.
1975, they called it the birth of a renaissance for baseball because after a decade of being dull and sluggish to many, baseball is back. And so is the Past Start Prime podcast. I'm your host, Scott Johnson. Got my two other hosts here with me, Bill Mahoney and Mark Hoffman. And guys, the 75 season is known for that great World Series between the Red Sox and the Reds. But even before we got to the Fall Classic, baseball was booming, and that is the cover of this week's issue, the baseball boom, as Sports Illustrated called it, which gets me to this. All right, I've said on this show a few times, first game I ever went to was Game 3 of the ALCS in Oakland. Red Sox sweep the A's and ended their dynasty. So I remember my first game. You guys remember the first game you ever went to, and if not the first game, the first memory you have of attending a baseball game? Mark, you go first.
Well, my first baseball games I went to, I grew when I first fell in love with baseball. I was living in Chicago, and I was fairly close to Comiskey Park. So my first memories are going to White Sox games. And I had a friend, Donald Horowitz, and his birthday was always June 21st, and his mom would take Donald and a bunch of kids to White Sox games. So that was my first memory. And I think I mentioned this in the show before, but we went to a doubleheader one night on June 21st, and in between games, White Sox game, they had a rock band performing on the field, and half the crowd was booing and half the crowd was cheering. And as kids, we didn't know which way to go because, I was 7 or 8. I wasn't quite into rock and roll music, a little bit, but not really. So I didn't know which way to go. And I think we started cheering, then we started booing, but that's actually my first memory of baseball.
Do you remember the band?
No, I wish I did. It could have been like Cream or some really
something Zeppelin
band, and I'd have no idea.
Zeppelin.
Yeah. Who's the Zeppelin?
That is too funny. What about you, Billy?
I remember my first game ever. I went with a friend of mine named Dean Ono. He took me to a Dodger game against the Mets. Lenny Randall led off the game with a walk. He stole second, sacrificed to third, sacrificed home. Mets win 1-0.
Oh,
that was the exact game. 1-0.
And who took you?
A friend of mine, Dean.
Oh,
him and his family.
Oh, yeah. Are you still friends with Dean?
I still am.
I thought so.
Yeah. I was just, I always remember. And also, there was one game, you don't get that close to a foul ball, or at least I never have. The foul ball bounced one stair below where we were. I mean, like sort of like near the edge of the stair. And it was one bullet. So I saw the ball hit, and then, someone else got it. But yeah, just a walk, a stolen base, a sacrifice. Mets win 1-0. That was the top of the first inning.
So with Baseball Reference, you can go back and find these box scores.
Yeah.
Have you guys ever done that? Gone to the game and been, found out who pitched and all that kind of stuff?
We used to go to, my parents would take us, I'd always beg them to just drop me off at an Angel game when I was like 13. So I think on my birthday, they sent us to a doubleheader. And so I always look back on that. I think Nolan Ryan pitched the first game. I don't remember the second one, but I just remember that Nolan Ryan pitched.
Yeah, I went to a lot, and I kept a lot of the scorecards because you would buy the scorecard magazine when you went to the game because you keep scoring the game while you were there. Yeah. And I kept a lot. Unfortunately, they're all gone from the fire. But yeah, I used to have like old box scores from like early 70s Angel games, especially when they played the Tigers, and look at the lineup and who did what in what inning.
I remember back when this would have been early 20s, and I used to love, that's when I just really loved baseball. I used to get one of those little like tape recorders and put a tape in there and tape a number of games and not look at the paper for a day or two. So if I knew I was going on a trip, and then on the trip, I would take that little recorder and bring it with me on the plane and box score the game to to
Mm.
pass the time in a plane.
Oh, wow.
Wow.
Weird
Very
stuff,
cool.
but I
Yeah.
loved it.
Yeah. It was such a part of our
Yep.
youth. We'll talk with Dinn Mann in a bit about another baseball boom that he helped create as one of the top executives at MLB Advanced Media in the early 2000s. Talk to him in a little bit about what they did to get people interested in baseball in a time when, baseball 20 years ago, every team was drawing pretty darn well. Not like it was 50 years ago, but we'll get to that in a little bit. Unless either of you have anything else, let's get to the scorecard. And Billy, at long last, Lily and Isa, they've been found.
Yeah, they have been. This story was keeping me up at night. I couldn't wait to find out what happened. Well, Lily
These are the elephants, right?
that escaped from the circus
The
around
Mets,
Hugo,
right?
Oklahoma. Yes. Remember they got away and they couldn't find the little 4.5, 1,500-pound elephants. God knows how come, but they couldn't find it. But everyone can relax. They are back under the big top. One of them, Isa, was spotted last week by a 20-year-old kid or 20-year-old girl as she grazed in an Easterwood pasture. That's about 15 miles from where the sheriff's posse was searching. Now, the other one, Lily, was found by Brad Wills while he was raking hay. Both animals were brought down with tranquilizer guns and hauled out of the woods in outsized trucks. Said one Hugo spokesman, "We're celebrating tonight with a barbecue. Then we'll get back to the main business, which is looking for crooks, not elephants."
Well, and I was about to say, how can you not find an elephant? Because
Yeah,
Oklahoma is like flat, but if
it
you have
Right.
is.
woods, then it
And
makes it
they're
harder.
4.5 feet, 1,500 pounds. It's not like, it's not like
Yeah,
it's a mouse.
right.
Well,
Well, a happy ending.
thank God they're not trying to find people because evidently they'd never find anybody.
Mhm.
Mark.
Well, I've got this fight that's going on in Australia, okay? And the referee, comes in and says, this is my first job as a referee. I'm very nervous. So could you please help me and hit above the belt and have a clean fight? And it was the first time that Mrs. Vicky Williams had refereed a boxing match, and she claims to be the first woman female referee. And she is qualified because her husband was Robbie Williams, who was a featherweight. Now,
Mm.
Vicky's a nurse, and she got a big round of applause. And she says, "I'm not into doing this for women's lib. I just want to take an interest in Robbie's career and in boxing in general." And this is her way of doing it.
Man, she's got some stones on her. I wouldn't get into the ring with those guys.
No.
I got one. How about this? We've talked about how college athletics was not the moneymaker that it is now. Kansas State, as an example, in 1975, they are running a deficit of $365,000 in the men's athletic programs, except basketball. So golf, tennis, gymnastics, and wrestling were left with no money at all. And the 75-76 schedule for those teams, it's been canceled.
Oh,
Now, fast forward to 2023, and Kansas State athletics generated just over $100 million in revenue and incurred $84 million in expenses, resulting in a net profit of just over $16 million. And that profit is all football. In fact, football has a
wow.
$27 million profit, and all the other sports lose about 10 million. So
Oh,
football pays for everything else, and that's pretty much true at
yeah.
all the major universities.
Well, it's interesting because when this happened in the mid 70s, that's when Kansas State went through this drought of being one of the worst, college football teams in the country. They'd always be, remember the bottom 10 would come out
Yeah.
weekly in the LA Times. They would always be in the bottom 10. And it wasn't until Bill Snyder got there. He
Yeah.
turned everything around in that football program and made it extremely profitable. The basketball team always had success. Rolando Blackman, players going back, to 70s and 80s, but the football team wants to do some really, tough times. But
Same
what they
with
say,
same with Kansas, right? They
Yeah.
kind of same thing.
right, right. But the one thing about Kansas State is, they say if you can't make it, if you can make it there, you can make it anywhere. Because where is Kansas State? In Manhattan.
There you go.
Right.
Now, isn't Darren Sproles Kansas State, or am I thinking Kansas?
Yep, he is. Darren
Yep.
Sproles is
I used to
Kansas
love
State.
Darren Sproles when he played there. That's the one player I knew.
Yeah, Kansas State. I think they are emblematic of college athletics now.
Yeah.
Basically, if you have a football program, you're in pretty decent shape, and they can fund all the other programs, and I'm fine with that.
Yep.
They said it, Billy.
Chip Campbell, he's the PR man for the Washington Capitals, worst team in the NHL and worst team in NHL history, on the team's new promotional film. It's not a highlight film, it's a historical document.
Yeah,
The Capitals were terrible back in the day.
I mean, if
man.
you're the worst team ever, what are you showing?
Yes.
Oh, here's a goal we scored in a game we lost 7-1.
That's what they do. They show it and they go, they don't tell you the score. They'll just go, then in game 33, so-and-so, split the pipes. You're like, come on.
No, it's going to be like one of those National Geographic things where they go, and now we're spotting the rare
elusive goal.
leopard. It's rarely seen. And now look, there's a rare win by the Capitals.
All right, Mark.
Oh, well, I've got Don Carter, who's a famous or well-known bowler. And they asked him, what's the advantage bowling has over golf? And he goes, well, the biggest advantage is you very seldom lose a bowling ball.
That is hard to do. It is something my wife would be able to do, I'm sure, because she misplaces just about everything. But not an easy task, that is for sure. Elrod Hendricks, I got one. Orioles catcher asked if he thought home run before hitting a game-winning 3-run blast. He said, no, I was thinking wild pitch.
Don't need the pressure.
Very good. And speaking of baseball, time now for the cover story, a brand new game. We've talked a lot about how 50 years ago, attendance wasn't what it was today. A sellout was very rare back then. The 3-time world champion A's drew 1 million fans in 73, but not in 72 or 74 when they won it all. In fact, in 72, they drew 921,000 people, but that was 5th most in the American League. So, it just wasn't the way it is now where people, what's a bad crowd for the Dodgers now? 42,000?
Yeah.
I mean, it's insane.
I don't even know if the Dodgers have really. I think most of their games are sellouts, aren't they? Or at least close enough to it.
Yeah, maybe tickets sold for sure.
Yeah.
Maybe, but yeah, they're over 3 million, no problem.
Yep.
Also, TV, kind of still a novelty back then. We've talked about how the local games were on, sporadically at best.
Yeah.
Certainly no home games back then, not on local TV. Game of the week, Monday Night Baseball. That's where you got to see teams other than the one in your market once a week if you were lucky. But in 1975, 13 of the 24 teams have increased attendance this year. And even in those cities where crowds are down, radio and television ratings are up. And one of the reasons, there's plenty of reasons that we're going to discuss here, but one of them, guys, is that the prices for a ticket to get into a game, not an issue. Like the Dodgers, for example. Mark, what are the Dodgers?
Well, if you want to get bleacher seats, first of all, they had not raised prices on their bleacher seats for 18 years. It cost you 75 cents to sit in a bleacher seat. And that would be the equivalent today of maybe what, $3?
Yeah. Yeah. I know. What is a bleacher seat now? Do you guys have any idea?
The lowest price for a Dodger game right now is $15 is the lowest ticket.
Okay.
I think you're probably behind 3 walls.
Oh,
I mean, Mark and I went there. It's not cheap.
No,
but it's a whole new thing. It's a whole entertainment thing. You go into the center field.
Good point, Mark.
It's like a circus. It's like,
it sure is.
It's not just a baseball game. If you have no interest in the baseball game, you can just hang out behind
Yeah, because
center
they have a band playing, and there's
a band. Yeah,
it's amazing.
Picture taken.
In this article, they make it clear that it's young people, college-age people who are coming to the game like never before. But one other thing that's making a difference, They are using promotions.
Yep.
There's giveaways. They're free hats, batting helmets, bats. I
Remember
mean,
we
you
had
name
bat
it.
nights? They used to have bat nights, and a lot of them ended up on the field. Same with the ball nights.
Oh yeah.
I remember they had a ball night. They had a ball night at Angel Stadium, and someone from the upper deck threw a ball and hit pitcher Joe Gray in the ribs.
Well, in bat night, you were basically giving 50,000 drunk people weapons.
Well, it's like the Roy Firestone joke. It's like so he's doing it's going, welcome to handgun and a hard liquor night at the ballpark.
Yeah.
Not a good combination.
No.
Well, no, Scott, can I go back? You had said that Major League Baseball had a very young audience. You know what's the average age for a baseball fan in 2025?
Oh gosh. I'm
50.
gonna guess. I'm gonna guess in their 40s.
Yes. Yes. 43.
Wow. Well,
Really?
in 75, it was still the number one sport. Football
Yes.
up. It was number one sport. Now it's number 3.
Yeah, and dropping.
Yeah.
Has the NBA passed it?
Oh, yeah,
Oh,
absolutely.
yeah. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Huh.
And so, I
NFL
mean, I
than
would think,
NBA.
can you say soccer's past it? Because we don't, I know in our
It's a
country, it's not
worldwide
as
sport, but
big.
not as a U.S. sport.
That's
And the
exactly,
interesting
that's what I was thinking.
And the interesting thing about baseball is, which is weird, basketball is an international sport. It's played everywhere.
Yep.
Football has international attention, but
Hockey.
baseball doesn't have these international markets. The Latin American markets,
Yeah.
the Asian markets are big into baseball, but not Europe, not Australia, not a lot of the world is not into baseball.
No. Obviously the Spanish speaking countries south of us
Right.
are, right?
Yeah.
Mexico, Cuba, Dominican Republic, those, but we have not made any inroads in Europe. One other thing that's making a difference is in the late 40s, they didn't even sell caps of the teams at the games. Yankees GM George Weiss said when it was suggested they do so, well, we don't want every kid in town running around with a Yankee cap on. They thought it would be less dignified and that it would cheapen the brand if everyone had one. They just did not. Marketing was not necessarily their strength.
No. In 74, baseball drew 30 million fans, which was a lot. There were less teams too. But in 2024, I think they drew over 71 million fans. And I think the biggest season might have been 07 when they had nearly 80 million, I should say,
Wow.
80 million fans. So 71 million in 24, almost 80 million in 2007. And they were proud in 74 and 5 of having around 30 million. But again, more teams.
Right. And it's not just giveaways that bring in the crowds. They would bring in stuntmen or have fireworks. Bill, what else would they do to entice people to come to the game?
Well, the Orioles employed a pretty girl in short pants to sweep off the bases and swat the umpires and coaches on their backsides with her broom. Yeah. And then in Philly, they had the hot pants patrol guides. These were women that would direct guys to their seats. Oh, yeah, that works.
Tell me about how they came up with the old timers game.
Oh yeah, this is from Ed Barrow in the article. They called him the old Yankee curmudgeon. He was hardly a promoter, but when he invited Lou Gehrig's former teammates to reassemble for the stricken Stars' farewell to Yankee Stadium in 1939, he inadvertently gave birth to the old timers game.
Really?
Doing something nice turned into obviously a money-making venture, and also bringing some of the players back so fans could cheer him again for maybe a last time.
It seems to me that the people in charge finally figured out that to sell the game, you needed to attract the young people to the game and make them fans for life. That's what they did for us. But at some point, the game started becoming more and more expensive, and they needed a new way to attract the fans, the younger ones in particular. And that's where our guest comes into play. In 2001, Dinn Mann was hired by MLB to run its MLB Advanced Media. That's MLBAM. What is that? Well, everything we now use to keep in touch with the game: MLB.com, MLB TV, the MLB app, so much more. If you pay attention to MLB online, Dinn Mann is the reason why. And Dinn is now the founder and CEO of GoatNet, a media company that Dinn started a few years ago. More on that in a bit. But first, Dinn, thanks for stopping by.
Scott, lovely to be here. We had a great team at MLB, and our CEO is a guy named Bob Bowman, and I had never sort of flown so high and fast as I did in that environment, in that setting, in that opportunity to be entrusted by Commissioner Seelig and Bob Dupay and the team owners. I had this glorious, great fortune of having grown up in these key markets of people who are pretty influential in baseball, whether it was David Glass in Kansas City, Stan Kasten, who was in Atlanta, and I was there for the 1 year in '95 when the Braves won the World Series during that part of the run, and Drayton McLean in Houston. And so really got to know a lot of great people who had significant input and influence, and they saw how I treated baseball along the way. So it was really pretty awesome that because I had grown up in Southern California, I wrote this letter to Commissioner Seelig and to Bob about going to Dodger Stadium and riding the bus Chavez Ravine, through Hollywood and changing buses. And even though Charles Manson or whatever was sort of in that era, it was still okay for a couple of young kids to just hop a bus and go to baseball games. So I had that backstory and how much I just adored the game itself. And I had the connection to Drayton McLean in Houston because I'd been sports editor of the Houston Post. I had been a sports executive at the Arizona Republic when Jerry Colangelo got the team awarded. And in Kansas City when David Glass took control of the team from the Ewing Kauffman estate, and Stan Kasten, again, having that breakthrough season with the Braves, they all had seen anecdotally how I treated the sport and how I celebrated the sport and how I enjoyed the sport and the people who were involved in it. And I think that was pretty influential in the opportunity that I was given, handed the keys to work with a great, wonderful team that was well resourced to help make sure we modernize the game and also increase the value of the franchises within the game. So there was a business objective and there was a marketing objective. And man, I just saw this chance to take the intellectual property that is a baseball game and all the official marks and logos of the teams that wear them, and knew where the technology would take us, that we could get it in front of more eyeballs than the game had ever had the privilege of touching.
Dinn, they say it's not what you know, it's who you know. And in that case, with you, it's everyone.
I tell people, Scott, not only was I born on third base, but it was air conditioned. So the Astrodome was up, and that's where I didn't know any better. And you don't know any better. I will tell you though, my ambition was a little bit, less on kind of like the ownership side, but more kind of on the media side. I had always been obsessed with the media and the content piece of the game, and I think that innocence made me more effective in trying to lead and trying to charge forward with how we would get the game into the palms of people's hands on their phones, to get it onto their laptops, and to get it onto just their screen of choice. And that's just, it's kind of a naivete, but also a drive. I got enough of my grandfather's drive to really push the envelope. And I think it was brilliant by Commissioner Seelig to set up the organization in a way that would be disruptive within the organization, that we weren't there to sort of do things the way they were done last year. I think a rule I had going into every meeting is just don't tell me how we did it last year. Let's talk about how we're going to do it now and how we'll do it going forward based on where we believe the ball is flying. And that's really what we did. So we had really creative people who also, you had to be really careful. You wanted to look for people who, in a newspaper, the setting was that if a game was a no-hitter, the sports department erupted when the no-hitter was broken up. I wanted a room of people who would erupt when the no-hitter continued. So it's a different kind of mindset when you go into it, sort of hoping the game gets over with. You don't have to work and cover the euphoria and spend more time at the office. But we wanted the office to feel like a playground. And to me, as even growing up as a kid, I always really treated it like this was a theme park, and we were able to run around behind the scenes before the people got there and after they left.
1975, one of the few teams that was not seeing this resurgence back then in attendance was Houston. The Astrodome was now fairly full. They were doing okay, but not like it was when it was first built in 65. What was your connection? You mentioned it briefly, but for our listeners, to the Astrodome, and what was going on there in 75 where they were having a hard time getting people in the stands?
You know, it was there was a leadership issue, but my grandfather had founded the Astros with a group of really great individuals down in Houston, a gentleman named Bob Smith, and a couple of other executives, Craig Cullinan, who had an oil industry background with Texaco, and George Kirksey, who was a brilliant PR guy. So you had this energy of the newness of the dome being the attraction as much as the game itself. So it was kind of a challenge, right? You have this amazing facility, unlike anything anyone had ever seen in sports and entertainment, and it attracted people just on a casual level to come experience the venue, to come appreciate the venue. Well, the team had to be good. You know, the team had to perform. So it wasn't until the Astros got good again in 1979, J.R. Richard type of era, where then it picked up again. And that's not always a great thing, that the game itself, if the game itself isn't enough of a drawing card, the team better be damn good. And so the team wasn't doing great at that time. The Astrodome was not as new. My grandfather was in poor health, and he had kind of, so he didn't bring the same energy level and the same dynamic that he brought to the picture. He was a great promoter, a wonderful advocate, not only for the game, but for Houston as a whole. So Houston was kind of running into that mid 1970s rut that I believe that the country was encountering in many respects. The trick was the product on the field as entertaining as, say, for example, the Savannah Bananas are today? And the answer is it wasn't.
Is there an oversaturation with baseball on TV? Because back in 1975, you had NBC Saturday Game of the Week, you had ABC Monday Night Baseball, and that's it, besides the local broadcasting. Now you can watch any game, anytime, anywhere. So has it kind of diluted the sport?
I actually think the opposite is true. I think that now there's more frustration with blackouts than there ever has been, because people want to be able to watch the game that they want to watch on the screen that is available to them. And because the proliferation of betting and some of the other things that make the game matter more, frustrate people when they can't watch what it is that they want to see. And that's a problem that needs to be flattened out, and it's overdue. But so I believe that the appetite for it is still as wonderful as it's ever been. I will say that the availability of highlights within 30 seconds after they happen allows someone to still sort of get on with their life and treat baseball a little bit more like elevator music. And, when a great song comes on that elevator, then they may, sit there and enjoy it a little bit longer, or they know that they can get it on demand 30 seconds later. I think that the betting piece of the puzzle is an intriguing component to me, because I think it adds another level of FOMO that somebody has that, I really better pay attention, because there's a chance to bet on some things that weren't there before. And so I believe that they really enjoy seeing it. The numbers are good. Baseball is still a very strong regional television product. And if the blackouts were solved, that number would skyrocket. It would be even more phenomenal, because you just have people who I believe are into the storylines around these players, these people. Today I know that Paul Skeens is pitching, and Paul Skeens is a great drawing card, and Paul Skeens has Livy Dunn as his significant other. That's pretty cool too. So there's an awful lot of people who are interested in baseball and who want to tune in when they know that Shohei Ohtani is pitching. They know that Paul Skeens is pitching, and they know that some of these exciting young players like Ellie De La Cruz is performing, and they're finding out more of these things. So I think the appetite is still extremely vibrant, and I believe that it's there. And I think that while there is a saturation of content, there's also a saturation of garbage content. Yes. The idea that the knowledge that you can rely on the content to be interesting. My heart broke a little bit the other night when the NASCAR game did not go off as planned.
Right.
Because it was such a beautiful setting. They did such an outstanding job with that. And, I don't mean to get too nostalgic about it, but even with on the All-Star game, when they showed the Hank Aaron thing and they did that projected onto the field, Scott, I know you probably geeked out over that and the technology that went into it and how they pulled that off. But I don't think it's a question of too many baseball games being on the air. I really think it's baseball keeping up with all the other competition for your eyeballs. So you better be accessible, which the elephant in the room with related to you better be accessible is solve the blackout problem.
So baseball in 75 was the #1 sport in the country, and now it's probably 3 behind football and basketball. So is it a marketing issue in the sense that everyone knows LeBron, everyone knows, Patrick Mahomes, but the baseball superstar isn't marketed the same way? You don't get that, I don't know, level of notability that a Mahomes or a LeBron gets. What can they do?
There's a lot of things that can be experimented with to improve that. But without, the sanctity of the sport is still one of these things in baseball that always comes up. And I'm not going to say that you need to do something in the actual at the major league level, but you certainly can experiment in other spots, right? And that's already happened with robot umpires and some other things to kind of these things that have been done to speed up the game. And there are ways to make it more marketable. But one thing you cannot change without blowing up the rules to an extent is that a batter is going to bat 4 times a game. The bat might last 1 pitch. It might last 6 pitches. And it may 3 out of 4 times, most likely, or at least 2 out of 4 times, it's going to end in what they call failure. And I hate it on radio when they say that they failed to score or they failed to drive in the run, because if you fail 65% of the time in baseball, you're going to the Hall of Fame.
Right.
So failure is really an effed up word to be used to describe this sport. But how do you get it to where in basketball, your favorite player is going to touch the ball 80% of the time? They go down and have the ball in the half court. In football, your favorite player is going to touch the ball on every snap. And I'm not talking about the center, but God loves centers. But the quarterback's got the ball in his hand on every snap. And that great pass rusher is trying to get that quarterback on every snap. And the likelihood that a superstar running back or an awesome wide receiver is going to be involved in the play is on every snap. So there's that challenge of the action and the person being on screen and their face being there. So baseball, in my mind, has an even greater responsibility to, first of all, make sure you're attracting the best athletes to play your game. Second of all, make sure that those athletes are getting the kind of exposure and energy behind them that makes people realize how marketable, exciting, and fun they are. And there's certainly a great generation of players who are coming in right now. We've already talked about a couple of them. Paul Skeens, being one of them. And Paul he's a really, really good guy. And he happens to have a really popular significant other, and his performance is awesome. Shohei Ohtani, performance is awesome. Went through an injury thing and still managed to bat and to electrify every game that he played. Last year's World Series, really great energy around that. Sometimes it's luck of the draw. You wind up with the Yankees and the Dodgers. You like your chances. And so the fact that you've got guys like Aaron Judge and guys like Shohei Ohtani and people like Paul Skeens in the game, it should be a marketer's dream. And I think that sometimes the energy is a little bit negative around the sport. I think it's baseball media tend to be kind of curmudgeons. They tend to be kind of the people who celebrate again when the no-hitter is broken up, as opposed to when the person has the achievement. So you've got almost this workaholic disadvantage of people who cover the game being tired. They're exhausted. They're traveling everywhere. They're covering 162 games. And so their attitudes are maybe not necessarily as energetic as you want it to be. But look, do I believe baseball can market the players more aggressively? There is no question. And I just think it's about the energy. The people in the room, are you there coming up with the proposals that are going to work? Are you throwing enough paint against the wall? Are you respecting the game? And is your attitude one of positivity and excitement so that fans can feed off of that? And so it can always be better.
Back in 70, 75, I was a diehard Angel fan. I would have done anything to see any of their games on TV, which I didn't get to see many, but you've mentioned it twice. What are your ideas on eliminating the blackout? Because that frustrates the bejesus out of me.
Well, it's an economic decision. You have to have enough time in the day to address the issue head on, to talk to all the stakeholders, and to get to the right conclusion. And to get to the right conclusion, you're talking about dealing with some legacy media concepts that suggest if I'm an owner of a regional sports network, and I have the cable rights to distribute through that form, and I have it in these other markets that sort of surround the area. You got to look at how antiquated is that idea that I own the right to sell into cable viewership in Las Vegas, for example. But I know that nobody in Las Vegas is going to pay me the money to do it. So therefore, I'm going to block the availability of the games. It's almost like, a bunch of kids on the playground, take your ball and go home, as opposed to come up with a resolution. And the resolution can be technological, where basically you have kind of what they call fast app switching, where if I can't get the game, I get messaged properly that I can put $2 in or $5 in or $7 in or $10 in, whatever that is, that I'll gladly jump over that hurdle. So I don't believe that the antiquated sort of broadcast legacy contracts, negotiations, and systems should still be holding back the sport. So you've got to address it head on, get the right stakeholders together, make it a priority, and solve it. There's a lot of money talked about here, and there's because the teams themselves own these rights to have their local/regional sports networks managed the way they have been in the past. Then they're spoiled by that. When we came in and did advanced media and created that property, the idea was everybody would split from those proceeds evenly. So now you didn't have the haves and the have-nots fighting necessarily the same way they did. In fact, the have-nots became the ones that had the louder voice at that point, because they always knew that they outnumbered, the big dogs. And so all of these, while there's more content available, there's more pent-up frustration with the availability not being logical, not being convenient. If everybody just got the message that, hey, by the way, you want to watch the Angels, you're going to need to sign up for this thing, and we're going to make it instantaneous for you, where you don't have to remember 46 passwords and what your first pet name was, or what your mom's birthday is. Although I hope everyone remembers their mom's birthday.
So baseball's booming. Back in '75, people are showing up. It's getting more exciting. That's about the time I started to get involved. But now recently, ESPN dropped the contract with MLB. How could that hurt baseball nowadays, especially for the kids coming up that, unlike me, don't listen to it on the radio?
Well, I got to say, first of all, ESPN, it's a great and powerful network, and it's important to be talked about there. But even when they've had baseball rights, they don't spend a lot of time talking about baseball. And you've got do a good job with College World Series, and they've just had sort of a sporadic interest in baseball of late. A little bit ironic to me, because Disney and ESPN, they were the ones who bought BAM Tech, which we really spun out of MLB Advanced Media. So baseball did ESPN a great favor to sort of set up the apparatus where it would be possible for them to do these great things that they're doing now, to take on this relationship with the NFL and NFL Network. So it's a challenge. Now, they're not the only game in town. So baseball has other great media partners, and baseball has a great, again, regional sports network footprint. There's a dedicated MLB network. There's a dedicated channel on Sirius XM satellite radio related to baseball. I think that baseball people sometimes do a disservice to the sport because they talk about it in such a hardcore way, that if you talk about it too much of a hardcore way, you're not going to have a casual person who's necessarily interested in all these modern sort of statistics. I think that they're interested in the people. They're interested in the games. They're certainly interested in some new statistics like exit velocity, like catch probability, like would that have been a home run in all 30 ballparks. So I don't want to say that baseball fans aren't interested in sort of those heavy hardcore stats. In fact, I think baseball is still one of the great sports in the world, because it makes you smarter, and it's a great thing to enjoy and really think about strategically and apply to your life. But not having ESPN as a partner is not the best outcome. I think people should stay tuned on that, because ESPN could actually be part of a solution related to everyday games. I think the challenge really is, are national windows relevant for baseball? National windows become harder and harder to justify, because what if the game is a dog? If you just have one random game and that game is a dog, you're sort of, out of luck, pardon my language. But if you're NFL Red Zone, you're awesome every 45 seconds. So the scoring happens more frequently. But I would argue that when you get to playoff baseball and you put it on up against a football game or a basketball game, there's a certain electricity to that game that you watch it, and even if you're doing the whole back channel, this and that, from one sport to the other, those baseball games are crisp. They feel urgent. And that's what you've got to try to do with the product in the regular season. Make it more crisp and urgent and exciting. And the NHL stumbled onto something really amazing with their All-Star concept, where they had the international players play against the U.S. players in that other thing that wasn't even their All-Star weekend. But all of a sudden, all of the social media verse was weighing in about that in real time. And all of a sudden it's like, whoa, what are we on to here? And baseball's seen it with the World Baseball Classic. Sometimes you need to kind of look at those things and lean into them and decide, what can we learn from this, whether it's for the All-Star game or whether it's for other possibilities, but to really celebrate and lean into that. I think the other piece of the problem is that baseball has a diversity problem. I believe baseball doesn't have enough kids from the inner city playing the game. And baseball is doing things right now that I believe are more productive and aggressive and exciting. It's still not translating into more African-American kids playing college baseball, more African-American kids playing high school baseball, more African-American kids making it to the major leagues. And I think until you can get more exciting athletes from all walks of life participating in your sport, it's going to hurt your numbers.
Dinn Mann is our guest, the executive producer of MLB's Advanced Media from 2001 to 2017. And Dinn, you're now the CEO of a media company that you started called GoatNet. Tell us what that's all about.
Well, you can't build the greatest of all time network without sort of addressing kind of the need for the recognition that everybody now is a network. Everybody has a story. Everybody has a studio in the palm of their hand. And so what we really started to take on was this notion of storytelling. How do you modernize storytelling so that people are not left with just garbage across all these platforms? There are people with amazing stories to tell. Take 30 for 30, I think, as an example. I think one place where ESPN obviously has done a remarkable job is in the 30 for 30 franchise. And look at the documentary on Jim Abbott. We looked at that world, basically said, players need to market themselves. Players need to gather and collect these assets of their stories and put them out to the world, but not just players, owners of teams. You see guys on Instagram who are breaking out, talking to billionaires. How'd you make it? How'd you become so rich? And then having this soundbite that becomes so cool and telling you about that. We're all fascinated by success stories. We're all fascinated by the pursuit of greatness. So GoatNet really is about helping people tell their stories and then to amplify greatness. So we've gotten aligned with a lot of organizations that want their stories told, a lot of people who want their stories told. We've spent time collecting content from, people like Bo Jackson and Eric Dickerson and Billy White Shoes Johnson and Drayton McLean and just people who have had remarkable lives and remarkable stories and stories that are in progress. And what's really wonderful about all of them is they all care so much about paying it forward and about the generations who are coming behind them. So I happen to love biographical content and happen to love the source work that biographical content can be for a movie like The Blind Side, for example, because I believe that everyone either has a Blind Side movie in them or they have a viable community of people around them where that movie exists within that group. And so what we're doing is we're modernizing production. Scott, I know near and dear to you and appreciate that the abilities that we now have with an iPhone to shoot tremendous content and to edit it more quickly thanks to AI. So AI for good is a pretty awesome thing. So GoatNet really is about that. GoatNet is about creating the greatest of all time network. And you are going to want to watch more if you really believe what Dick Ebersol did, and I do from the bottom of my heart. What Dick Ebersol did to get people, casual fans, interested in the Olympics was you knew the faces in the crowd, Sports Illustrated style backstory of everybody competing, even though you hadn't heard their name once in your life. So it's a really important lesson for the people who play the game, for the stewards of the game, for the people involved in the game to sort of help lift people up through their stories, create better marketing power through your story, create that book that is you through that story, recognize your life's a story in progress, and get every tool that you can to tell that story effectively and impressively.
I love it. Wonderful.
That's
wonderful.
good.
So in 75, basically till now, most teams get in the 2 to 3 million range. I mean, getting fans in the seats isn't an issue the way it was 50 years ago. So they bring you in to MLB and they kind of hand you the keys to the car with a blank canvas almost. And they say, all right, start driving. And, I'm the kind of guy that when I hear an idea that sounds crazy, my first reaction is, that'll never work. I remember seeing a poster in Times Square of this hip hop musical they were going to do about the founding fathers. And I was like, that's the dumbest idea I've ever heard. You sound like the opposite, Dinn. They must have known that you were the kind of guy that would hear something that many people think is outlandish, and you're like, okay, how do we make it work?
Two things. Lin-Manuel Miranda obviously put together an extraordinary show. And I know I didn't go until the last weekend, so I got to see Lin-Manuel Miranda in Hamilton, and was thrilled by that. So okay, put that aside. We had everybody from, even Mark Cuban, I know, said something behind the scenes. It was passed on to me that it would never work, that you could actually cover your own sport, that you could be an internal media organization that would, quote, cover your sport. Well, we weren't there to just cover our sport. And we weren't there to dig up dirt or to try to become the New York Times of coverage. What I saw in old school offline media was that there was an obsession and a trend and a tendency to only be the watchdog. And if you're only the watchdog and you're only growling at the door and you're never curling up by the fire or fetching the stick and being the person's best friend who's feeding you every day, you're making a big mistake. You're not the dog everybody wants. The dog everybody wants is going to curl up by the fire. Dog is going to spoon with you on the couch while you're watching a game. And that's just, so I went into it not thinking, well, we need to go break news on steroids, or we need to go break news on collusion, or we need to go break news on Denny McClain type things happening, or a Pete Rose type of thing happening. No, we need to be there to deal with them and to help enlighten people about what's going on and not pretend that it wasn't happening. So we had this kind of perfect opportunity where, the PR teams are there to play defense. We had the chance to go in with a bat in our hand and try to bat the ball around and to do something that would move the needle and change the game. So to create relevant destinations, well, you had to have media people as part of your empire who would get their phone calls returned or get their text messages returned. So you do have good information about the things people really cared about every day, which was who's hurt, who's being traded, who's being signed as a free agent. None of that's controversial, but we needed to have independence from the PR department. So in many ways, we worked hand in hand with PR, where they received the message wonderfully, where we basically said, treat us like the other credentialed people around the venue. We just happen to be rights holders. We have the rights to show highlights. So, okay, why don't we try this? Let's take our property and make it extraordinarily valuable, where we can sell off something, a part of it, by creating extra value on top of that value, and still manage the game and learn from all those relationships so we can make the ticketing experience better. We can take the secondary market and organize it better, where you're not buying tickets that may be fraudulent. And all these things, we can stream the games and send them out. Even before the video technology was truly ready for it, we had the freedom to experiment. So I was delighted by the opportunity. It's really what I've been waiting for. I'm sitting at my desk in Kansas City at the Kansas City Star. We had an award-winning sports department. I was running the Sunday paper as well as deputy managing editor, doing all these great things. And I got this random cold call from Harry Summerdike at Spencer Stewart saying, this is what baseball is looking for. They're talking about doing this thing of pulling together all their interactive media rights. And I'm just thinking, hallelujah. I'm in Kansas City. I love to watch the Astros. I can't watch the Astros. Mm-hmm. I can now be a part of this thing where I'm covering every team and responsible for putting the best foot forward related to what that coverage is. And every year I have a team that wins the World Series. So instead of having a newsroom that's glad the day the Royals got eliminated, I'm in a newsroom where I know we're covering a parade. Every single year we are covering a parade, and what a badge of honor that was. So I had the great joy of getting to cover and strategize within a sport that I've loved my whole life, and yet also the opportunity as an entrepreneur to create something that would have profound value. Back in the 75 thing that we're referencing tonight, you had Pete Rose, you had Carlton Fisk, and you had, the Red Sox and the remarkable World Series that they would go on, that they would have. And of course, that was great for the sport, right? You had these storied franchises, the Reds, who were always the opening day team, and they had Pete Rose, on their team, and you had Fisk with the glorious, waving of the ball to stay fair. man, what an amazing time that was. But I'll go back to what I said about diversity and kids from the inner city. And, you know, you want players who represent all neighborhoods in your country, playing your sport and doing a great job, because there's marketing that just goes with that. Everybody knows what high school these kids went to if they're in that community. It's like, okay, we're going to watch him tonight because he went to our high school. We're going to watch him tonight because he represents all these kids that he can lift up because he got out. So I talked to a lot of football players, and there's a real common theme with some of them that came up in tough neighborhoods and rough circumstances, and they saw a way out.
You're not just an innovator. There's obviously a love of baseball that you have. December 31st, 2026, the collective bargaining agreement expires, and everything is pointing to a lockout in 27. How damaging is that going to be, especially if the entire season may get wiped out?
Well, you know, we've seen what happened, the consequences of that type of, you know, draconian, unfortunate, you know, misaligning of the stars can be severe. I think that some people view an inevitability to that end. I don't. They seem to always solve it. You made a reference. I used to be able to say baseball, the sport with no clock, you know, came through at the midnight hour, you know, but now there's a clock. I can't say that. There's a pitch clock. It's an interesting combination of owners now that I believe are a lot of people who really love the game and love the sport. And it's an interesting situation for players now. Their career's a little bit shorter. And if your career's a little bit shorter because the data have sort of informed front offices that they can have a player come in and replace someone who's now at 20, washed up at 29, sadly, and not really washed up, but that can be held against them. And they get somebody who's more affordable and put them in there. So the careers are shorter. So the players are probably less willing to sit out for a year. But the owners love the game, and they know that the mother's milk of the industry is not just the TV money but it's the gate money. You got to have games. So it can be a mess. And, you know, I dread that. And I believe that it's really all about what is the collaborative nature and what is the trust level of the parties who will be at the negotiating table. I think that's the thing that discourages me the most, that I really don't see that there's a trust level there that's necessary to help us all sleep at night better. But I know they want it. You know, they want to come to an agreement that's favorable and helpful for the long term of the sport. But everybody's got to do it. Both sides have to do a better job of articulating, why is the salary cap good? Why is the salary cap bad? What is the analysis that can make everybody can sway public opinion? Because I think ultimately it's public opinion that matters the most. Public opinion doesn't generally like to choose between multimillionaires and billionaires because they sort of don't relate to either. And they just want the games to be on. They want the games to be played. And the danger is if the games aren't on and the games aren't being played, there's a lot else to watch now.
You know, Dinn, one thing, your GoatNet website is wonderful. Just wonderful. I'm trying to, you know, look at that and think how we can do that with what we're doing. Really nice.
Thank you so
But the
much.
other thing I've noticed over the last almost hour is you just don't have a lot of energy. You know, I'm kidding. I'm ready to run through a wall for you, Dinn. And I just met you today. Was there ever a time when you're at MLBAM and you have an idea and they just say, that's not going to work. Oh, come on. And then you were proven right later?
Well, you have to sort of bulldoze your way toward, there was an expression we had, like pretend to accept feedback. And just go do it anyway. I was sort of the guy who was a peacemaker quite a bit with the people at the team level. You know, you think about how you need to navigate that. You've taken over their website and you've taken over a lot of their internet rights, and you want to demonstrate what a privilege you know that it is. I think it helped me a lot that I came from a place and from a family that wore their shoes. And so I looked at it and always was deferential and understanding. So yes, but did we get feedback that no, you can't do that, that'll never work? That's ridiculous. I guess a great example was Will Ferrell playing for 10 teams in one day at spring training.
Yeah.
People told me, man, you're crazy. And I almost think somebody was setting me up to fail. So they'd have some excuse to kind of pull the rug out from under me, but it worked, man. We not only did we pull it off, more of that should still be happening. It was a blast. It was wonderful content for the game. It was a great experience for the players. The commissioner had a cameo in it. The players all had cameos in it. I saw the locker rooms loosen up as it was all playing out. And that was a wonderful example. And so, some days you doubt yourself just a little bit, but you need to believe in it and you need to pressure test it and you need to charge forward and build the thing that you realize the public wants, but not do it in a reckless and irresponsible way where you do get kind of that cold, I guess I would call it, kind of a mudslide or a sinkhole, probably a sinkhole, a giant sinkhole where you're just done, you're toast, and people are like, hey, wait, enough's enough. We're not going to do that anymore. Fortunately, we did something that created profound value for the industry. And I think what we're doing at GoatNet is kind of a next iteration of what I did back there. It feels to me like it's a BAM Tech 2.0. And I think that's the thing that has me the most emboldened and excited about where we're going.
I was going to say that I'm sure Scott's told you, his company, Pro TV Sports, we've covered the spring training for about, I think, Scott, has it been 30 years or at least coming up on that? Well, we were there.
You were there for Will Ferrell.
Yes, we covered that when he did the White Sox Giants. Yeah, and he switched teams in the middle of the game. It was the greatest gift ever. I don't know why they don't do more things like that.
Well, the backstory on that too was that Robin Ventura, played a critical role, and Scott Reifert, the PR director of the White Sox, played enormous behind the scenes roles, because if they hadn't made a pitching change, Will wasn't going to get there in time to land that helicopter in center field. Mm-hmm. So they made a pitching change as a courtesy, which again showed the spirit of the game and everyone being on board and recognizing it. So the two people who I probably should thank the most, aside from all the people at Funny or Die and HBO and Hallie Stark and Mike Ciano and other people who were helpful for us on the ground, and who just did an amazing job. But the two Chicago managers played like significant roles, because Joe Madden was having so much fun with it that he had Will bat when he wasn't supposed to bat. They're like, oh man, Madden's gone off script. What do we do? Well, he knew that was his field. We couldn't go there. He's like, stop the game. I wasn't going to do like Uncle Leo on Seinfeld, stop the show. And so anyway, so there we go. Will bats again. So that really put us behind by about 20 minutes. And that explains why we had to buy some time at the White Sox game later on. And yeah, so it was a blast to do. And to see like Marcus Simeon interact with Will in a scene, and Josh Reddick and some of the other players just had a blast doing it. And for it to culminate the way that it did, I should mention the other cool thing about it was for Will's charity, near and dear to him, for kids who are trying to go to college and they've been diagnosed with cancer, and he helps them get to college, and he's still doing it to this day. And back to GoatNet. And the backstories of why people do certain things and how they're ticked in the lives that they touch. Fun content, amazing opportunity, great thing, and also touching lives and doing something that helps to make a difference. So that was a wonderful event. Baseball can't do that every day, but there are pages from the Savannah Bananas playbook that should be photocopied. And I don't even think it wouldn't be baseball stealing from them. Savannah Bananas has stolen from baseball.
Questions fly, lightning strikes as answers try. Buzzers wreak chaos in the air. Trivia time, truth or dare.
True or false? 50 years ago, August 1975, one of the greatest baseball movies of all time started production. True or false? And can you even name that movie?
Well, I'm going to say that it was the Bad News Bears. And
you are correct.
Great movie.
Yeah, you're sort of twisting a knife on me right now, because I had a chance to be an extra in that movie on one of their opposing teams. And Mark, you grew up somewhere near where I was.
Right.
And we were too cool. We're playing down there on La Cienega. We're playing our Little League games. Right. And so I was in that. I was right there. So I'm 10 years old. I was right there. Just had the chance to go to the Valley, and that's where they filmed it.
Right.
We're like, too cool. No, I want to go to practice, or I want to go play in the sandlot, or I want to go in my driveway. Had I known, would have been life-changing type of experience. Although I think that maybe that's one of those things that has motivated me, the chip on my shoulder. I missed out on that. I'm not going to miss out on anything else. So let's just make sure that doesn't happen. In fact, the sequel, The Bad News Bears in Breaking Training, which went into the Astrodome.
Right.
My brother and I had a hand on suggesting to the Sherman brothers, whose dad was intimately involved in the project, and the Mirish brothers, who were intimately involved in the project, the Mirish brothers, more specifically, John and Richard Mirish. And so they asked us about which players maybe could come into the dugout and be a part of the film. And we said, Bob Watson, Cesar Cedeno, they both got mentioned by the kid who got made fun of for looking like one of the Marx brothers. And he said, it's Bob Watson and Cesar Cedeno. And Bob had the line, let the kids play. Right. He didn't say let them play, but William Devaney in the crowd said let the kids play. Right. And so anyway, so that was kind of my makeup flex, was that there was some input in which players got to contribute to that film.
Is there something you've not done, Dinn? Seems like you've done or been part or seen everything. We go 4 hours with you and not even tip the iceberg of amazing things you've done, man.
Look, I appreciate that very much, but I will tell you, I really live vicariously through other people. And part of the reason for GoatNet to me is, your own longevity. You look at the world and say, how can I make sure that there's a machinery in place so everybody's great stories can be told and shared? Because there are so many great things you don't get to do and you haven't gotten to do. And you should have an appetite for that. But no, I have not done everything, but my goal is to meet people who have done everything collectively and share that with the world.
Dinn, I was wondering how we were going to navigate, talking attendance from 1975 and what you did to, and I was like, I think we should be able to get 30, 40 minutes out of them. So this just exceeded all my expectations, and we can't thank you enough for giving us an hour. One of the best days. I've been doing those spring training feeds for a long time, and I remember getting there nice and early and for the A's camp when Will Ferrell started his day. Started it with Bert Campy Campaneris. And I got great pictures of that. And then, yes, later that night, ending it in Glendale, and we have you to thank for that. So thank you for a great memory for all three of us.
Oh, thank you guys. Appreciate it. Look, really enjoyed the time a lot and look forward to staying in touch. And I'll be out in Southern California in a few weeks. So I'll give you a heads up. It'd be great to see you guys in person.
Oh, that'd be great.
Wonderful.
I love it.
Yes.
Love it.
All right. Thanks,
Dinn Mann, everybody. Goatnet.com.
Thank you.
Twinkle, twinkle, and coming off a Super Bowl win and after losing 20 pounds in the offseason, Terry Bradshaw has a new sense of confidence heading into the 75 season, and he should. The whispers have always been that Bradshaw wasn't the brightest bulb, but he disagrees. He says, in fact, why, you won't believe it, but the people even asked me what kind of grades I got in English. Listen, anyone who knows football knows that Terry Bradshaw has a damn good brain. After 5 years in the NFL, I feel I can handle any type of defense they throw against me. Of course, maybe people think I do stupid things, like running over tacklers instead of running out of bounds. Everyone knows it's stupid for quarterbacks to risk getting hurt. And he goes on to say that he thinks his style of play is going to be the new way of doing things, but it really isn't. I mean, yes, we have quarterbacks that run more now than ever, but they are still taught basically to never, ever take a hit.
Scott, you mentioned about Bradshaw, people saying he's dumb. Wasn't there, what was the one player that said Bradshaw was dumb? He couldn't spell the word cat if you spotted him the C and the T.
Yeah, that was Hollywood Henderson in the Cowboys.
That was it. Yeah.
Yeah, well, he was smart enough to beat those Cowboys.
but this All-Star game, people are going, what? Huh? They starting in 1934, and they'd had the NFL champions, not the Super Bowl champions, play these All-Stars from college football. And it went all the way until 1976. They would open the exhibition season with the defending Super Bowl champs taking on a group of college All-Stars. And I mean, in this game, there's the picture. You see Bradshaw getting sacked by.
Was that Randy White?
It's Randy White. Yeah. So here's a future Hall of Famer. So you can understand why the NFL at some point said, maybe this isn't a good idea. And can you imagine today in the NFL letting their starting quarterback play an exhibition game and get sacked 6 times?
Yeah.
I mean, like we said, QBs, I'd be shocked. Any QB that has the job right now in NFL, maybe they'll play one series
in the final
third game or something like that. But for the most part now, they don't play exhibition games at all. Like Brady didn't play an exhibition game the last 5 or 6 years of his career.
Actually, the Chargers had a few of their offensive starters, line guys in.
Yeah.
For the Hall of Fame game. No Justin Herbert, but
Yeah.
A lot of Trey
they
Lance.
play Omari and Hampton.
Yeah.
But for the most part, their quarterbacks never play anymore. They used to.
And think of this. So Bradshaw wins the Super Bowl, finally kind of cements his place in his 5th season in the NFL as being the QB1 for the Steelers. And then he comes out against the college all-stars in a game in July or August, has kind of a crappy game. And they're saying, after the game, they're asking Chuck Noll, who's not happy about it, who's your number 1 quarterback? So the guy beats the Vikings in the Super Bowl, but kind of, and then Joe Gilliam came
That was
in
Joe Gilliam.
and played pretty well. And so
He led him to 2 TDs, and they won the game by 7.
Yeah, well, you know what? I think they did just fine during the regular season that year.
Yeah, I think so. I think they made the right choice.
But I think they ended up replacing this game basically now with the Hall of Fame game. So
Exactly.
basically now you open every exhibition season with the Hall of Fame game in Canton.
Yep. Let's move on. Hell and Heaven on Wheels. Billy, what's this?
This is about a bicycling, and I'm going to talk about Mary Jane Roach. This was a gal in 1971. They said her background basically was nothing more strenuous than high school cheerleading. Then she took up cycling, and 5 months later won the National Road Championship. And there's more to her. They said once at the age of 35, she rode 12 miles on her bike to the hospital to give birth to her first daughter. Unbelievable.
Wow.
But sadly, unfortunately, she was killed in a road accident while training a
Ooh.
client in 1993. Sad ending, but she was just amazing that she had never done anything athletic. And then turned out she was, winning national road championships. Just amazing story.
Yikes. And how did she die again?
She was training a businessman, and they were riding in a lane, and a guy came over in her lane and ran her over. They said knocked her 96 feet into a pond.
That's horrible. Now they're running like crazy up in Oregon, Billy, and that's still the case today. Oregon probably has more runners per capita than any state. What's going on 50 years ago?
Well, I'm just going to say this is the second story that I'm talking about something or someone named Lily. This one isn't an elephant. It's Lily Ledbetter. Now, Lily Ledbetter is a morning person. She gets up at 5:45 in the morning and runs 5 miles. Then she goes back to bed. She's 4'8" and holds the world record in the marathon for women under 19, having run it in 2:56:07. Oh yeah, just to let you know, Lily Ledbetter is 13 years old.
Oh my God. I think she's 4'8" because she was 13 and not like that was.
Then she goes back to sleep. That is amazing.
If I ran a marathon, I'd go back to sleep too afterwards.
Yeah, she's just some of these people you read about, just impressive.
Your two Lilies are pretty opposite of each other.
I know they are. One Lily's running, one Lily's hiding in some sort of hay that we don't know about in Oklahoma.
That's the one, is a clown.
but you know what?
Exactly. I don't think this Lily's Ledbetter's gonna be thrown in a circus anytime soon.
No.
But if you live in Oregon,
Bozo.
I wonder what the percentage of population of people in Oregon that run, because I would have to imagine 50% because
it is high.
Such a running outdoor.
It's a beautiful place though to run.
Yep. Let's talk a little bit about more than a pretty face. And no, they're not talking about me. They're talking about Phyllis George. She was an anomaly back 50 years ago. A woman broadcaster in sports? What? Now it's totally common. And that's because of women like Phyllis George. Yes, she was a beauty, having won the Miss America crown in 1970. But CBS hired her to work on their Sports Spectacular show. And of course, we all remember as being part of the NFL Today with Brent Musburger, Irv Cross, Jimmy the Greek Snyder.
Yep.
I mean, they talk about must-see TV for 10-year-old Scott Johnston.
Yep.
NFL Today was must-see TV.
Every Sunday.
She wasn't the first female announcer that CBS employed, but she was the most successful.
Yeah.
Wasn't she the first national female sportscaster?
There was a female reporter before her, but she was just out in the field. I mean, Phyllis was a studio host.
Yeah.
Became obviously the most popular.
And mind you, I was a kid, but it didn't bother me she was there. It wasn't like she didn't, do a lot in terms of, she didn't get in and argue with, with Brent or anything. I thought she was fine. I thought she did a good job.
I
Being
mean,
12.
for lack of a better word, and this is more of a dig at the people that were making the hiring than Phyllis George. She was eye candy. She was
Yeah.
not hired because she knew sports. She will say that she didn't know much about sports. She even asked, why should viewers listen to a former Miss America talk about sports? But
Mhm.
she was very homey and she was very likable. And so she would talk to these guests that she was going to interview, like Dave Cowens of the Celtics, as an
Yeah.
example, and she would get them to kind of ease up, and then she would ask them questions that were kind of like, tell me about this because I don't know about the Celtics and the tradition here. And it was almost like they were giving her a lesson in what they have done, and she was asking out of genuine curiosity, but she had a sweetness about her that was authentic, and I think that was her real attribute.
Yeah, the softness that she came across on TV, with the other guys being all knowledgeable and with the male persona, she just knew how to bring it down and just make you go, she's just so nice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. Hey, let's talk a little baseball now, shall we? And this is one of everybody's favorites. He didn't have the longest. He actually did have a long career. I'm talking about the Mad Hungarian Al Hrabosky. I think he played for 12 years, but he was only at the peak of his game for a couple years, and his absolute peak was here in 1975. He was a literal maniac on the mound, but he was also very good. He would psych himself out or up, I should say. He'd walk behind the mound and he'd start like almost hyperventilating, thinking about how this guy in the batter's box was going to try and get a hit off him. And then he would abruptly turn around and he'd get up on top of the pitcher's mound and he'd look in, and he had this beard and he looked insane. And I think he just freaked guys out, to be quite honest. Like Mark Fidrich was just a goofball, but he wasn't really
Right.
scaring the crap out of people.
No,
But
no,
this guy
people
was.
people loved it because he talked to the ball and he'd manicure the mound. But Hrabosky would like turn his back to the hitter and just psych himself up, like just get so angry it looked like, and then he'd turn around, storm back up the mound, and throw his pitch.
Yeah, did you read that little story in there though that Habrowski talked about of time a fan put a bird on his head?
Yeah.
And he said about the possibility of biting it off
Yeah.
and biting the head off the bird. He said, I want batters to think I'm crazy. I want them to know I'm crazy. And what could be crazier than decapitating a bird with one fatal chomp? His
Right.
teammates talked him out of it, thankfully.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ozzy Osbourne.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
Ozzy Osbourne,
Yeah.
remember?
Yep.
Oh my goodness.
But he was just, I mean, I loved it when you saw him because you could just almost see him just revving up. And then he would just get right back on the mound. It was just great. He'd slam his ball into his mitt. It was just great.
Well, he cultivated this persona that he was nuts starting as a football player in high school. He said, I was probably the meanest man ever to play the game. I love to inflict pain. I made a science of the late hit. Once, when a player made a catch in my defensive area, I piled on top of him. Then, while offering to help him up, I slugged him. I was usually thrown out by the third quarter. Sportsmanship was not his specialty, and get this, in his 2 seasons in the Mexican League, he was always packing a 38, said it made him feel really powerful. He would pitch until 1982, but his best season was here in 75. He goes 13-3, 22 saves, and a 1.66 ERA. Ooh. Al Hrabosky, the Mad Hungarian, man, he exemplifies or is such a. I mean, he is 1975 baseball through and through.
Yeah. With the pitch clock, would he be able to do that nowadays?
No. I think the guy running the clock would just stop it. Be like, oh, you pitch whatever you want.
I don't think, nowadays they would take that fun point out of the game.
Yeah. Elsewhere, what you guys got?
I don't know how many complete games have been thrown in baseball this year. I want to say there's been 8, I think.
Yeah.
Well, back in the day, complete games were thrown all the time. In a span of 4 days, Randy Jones of the Padres beat the Braves twice. He allowed he went 18 innings, 9 hits, 1 earned run.
Wow.
Yeah, in span of 4 days. And nowadays, 93 pitches, boom, out of the game.
Yeah, but he didn't throw heat, so
He didn't.
he packs his
But,
arm.
but still, he had to go through nowadays, they don't let you go through the lineup 3 times.
So
And he faced him
yesterday,
twice in 4 days.
yesterday, Dylan Cease pitched. He went 5 innings. He
Yep.
gave up 1 hit, no
Yep.
runs, 1 walk, 9 strikeouts, 90 something pitches, and
Yep.
he was
Yep.
done.
Yep. If you look at the baseball guy, the starters, you will see between 89 and usually 98 pitches. And I remember Brad Ausmus, when he was the manager of the Angels, had said, usually he gets about 93 pitches. That's good enough. And that's exactly what all the teams do nowadays.
What do you got, Mark? Give us an
That's the
update
Tiger update.
on your Tiger.
I got 2 quick things. Okay, first
Okay.
on the Tigers. Okay,
Yep.
they hit 10 homers that week, 4 by my favorite player, Willie Horton. But the team went 2-7 because they committed 10 errors. With the 2-7 is unique because they probably started the week 2-0. That 7 is the beginning of their 19-game losing streak. Those are the first 7 losses of that 19-game losing streak.
Nice.
So next week it'll probably be up to like 12, 13.
They could be 0-6. It
Oh,
could
they'll
be
definitely have 0
0-7.
wins next week. Yeah.
And they could have even played a doubleheader. They could go 0-8. So
Well, they played 9 games that week and went 2-7.
I mean, that's what we call a tease. The people are
Right.
just dying to know
Dying to
how
know.
many games your crappy Tigers lost next week.
Yep. And they just had a 9-game winning streak too. But the other story I wanted to talk about real quick, her player, is he was playing for the Pirates at that time, right fielder Jay Johnstone. And there was a bunt situation, and Johnstone snuck behind Frank Tavares of the Pittsburgh Pirates. Johnstone was playing for the Phillies, actually, as a right fielder, and he tagged him out on a pickoff throw. So they didn't throw to the first baseman. They threw to him, the right fielder, who came up behind the player and tagged him out. But I wanted to talk about Jay Johnstone. He was just such a fun player, and he started with the Angels in 1966 and ended with the Dodgers in 85. But he played for the Angels, he played for the A's, the Phillies, the White Sox, the Yankees, San Diego. He was all over the place. But the story I remember most about Jay Johnstone, in 1982, I did an interview with him, and his daughter must have been like 2 years old at the time. And he's holding his daughter in his arm while I'm doing the interview. And I used part of that because there was also an exchange where I used his soundbite and Tommy Lasorda's bite talking about Johnstone. That was really funny. But I use it as my audition tape because, it's great having a ball player holding his little kid while he's doing the interview with you. And I'm sure that was part of the reason I got my weekend job in Bakersfield.
Can I give you one memory that's a very random Jay Johnstone memory?
Yeah.
Who was the leadoff man for the Mariners in the movie The Naked Gun?
Oh, it was Jay Johnstone.
Jay Johnstone.
Leslie Nielsen was
getting
patting him
screwed
down.
because Dave Spivak was throwing him that day. And, Jay Johnstone was a leadoff hitter for the Mariners.
Right. And he was waiting for him to call it a strike or not.
Yep.
And
Yep.
he goes, strike?
Yeah.
And then the crowd goes wild. And he's like,
that's Enrico Palazzo.
right, exactly.
Sorry.
The funny thing about Johnstone is he played for a long, long time.
Yeah.
And he was, such a character and kind of a goofball, but he was actually a pretty good hitter.
He was.
Yeah.
I looked up his stats, and like in 76, he played almost full time, hit 318 with the Phillies. I want to say like the next year he hit like 330. He was a big time. I remember him as a pinch hitter for Lasorda was great at using the pinch hitters, Moda, Davalillo, and Jay Johnstone.
Davalillo.
Let's talk a little Seattle Sounders soccer, Billy, and
I'll get this quick. These teams hate each other. I lived in Seattle. If you live in Seattle, you hate the Timbers. If you live in Portland, you hate the Sounders. And there's no love lost it is a as heated and hated rivalry as there is in sports. And in soccer, that's saying something because there's a lot of them. But the Sounders do lead in regular season wins. They have 9 more. But the Timbers, and I know this tears the Sounders up, they have the edge in playoffs. They've beaten the Sounders 5 of 9 times. But still, these two teams hate each other.
So when the Sonics would play the Blazers, was there hate there too? Was there this
Not well, I wasn't there
king
at
of the
that
Northwest?
point. It could have been, but soccer is a different level.
Yeah.
Like when I was there, people would ask, are you we went to a couple of games and I wasn't wearing any, a team gear, and someone would go, are you a Timbers fan? I go, no. Oh, fuck. They like, come on, get out of here. They were upset. Yeah. They'd be all upset.
Well, in terms of rivalry too, I equated. So we were up in Canada and we were visiting some friends up there, and there's this big rivalry between Edmonton and Calgary. They're both in Alberta, but Calgary people despise Edmonton and Edmonton despises Calgary.
Well, that's rude on both accounts, I think.
Yes.
Hey, Ozer?
Those Canadians are just full of hate. For the record, you guys got anything, Mark?
I do. I've got, guess what? The Yankees have made a new hire at manager. It's a guy named Billy Martin. Oh, wow. I wonder if that'll work out. How many work out 4 or 5 times? But it was funny because 2 weeks ago, I was talking about him getting fired by the Texas Rangers, and now he's got a job right away.
Yeah,
replacing Bill Burden.
Yeah, you kind of knew. I read in this article that the Yankees lost 3 straight games, being shut out in all 3 of them. August 2nd, 1975, he gets fired and replaced by Billy Martin. He would go on to win a World Series with them in 1977, thanks in large part to not Reggie Jackson, but Mike Torres.
Mike Torres, that's right. Made the last 2 complete games.
That's right.
Our guest.
That's correct. 2 complete games. Imagine that.
Yep.
Jeez, speaking of complete games.
And just catching, how many pitchers ever, other than a strikeout, make the final out in terms of catching a ball?
That's right. For the record, Billy, you got one?
I do. Willie Wood. He was named head coach of the Philadelphia Bell of the WFL. Okay. That made him the first black head coach in modern day history. He was also the first black head coach in the CFL when he coached the Argonauts, Toronto Argonauts, in 1979. He's also in the NFL Hall of Fame, and he played with the Packers from 1960 to 1971.
Faces in the crowd. I think we all have the same guy here, Mark.
Yep, it's John Cook. He's 17 years old of Rolling Hills. He captured the California State Amateur Golf Championships held at Pebble Beach, and he played to a +1 handicap. He also won the LA City Junior and has the Junior World title. So what became of John Cook? Well, he had a pretty good golfing career. He's still alive, 67 years old. He played on the PGA Tour and then the Champions Tour, which is the new name for the Senior Tour. He won 11 times on the PGA Tour, 10 times on the Champions Tour, and he won 7 other tournaments. His best finishes, he finished 21st at the Masters, 2nd at the PGA Championship, 2nd at the Open Championship, and 4th at the U.S. Open.
And how about this? Yeah. Jack Nicklaus came up to him when he was 17 and said, "You need to go to Ohio State." And so where did John Cook go to college?
Penn State.
Oh. Iowa.
That's right. That's right. Michigan.
Yeah, he was an Ohio State guy. I think he was actually born in Columbus, so that probably played a part as well. But yeah, John Cook, it's fun to see when these faces, it's fun, both of them. You see faces in the crowd and someone did something when they're 14 and we never heard from them again. And then these guys that do well and go on to have major careers. So,
yeah. But if you look at John Cook's face in this as a 17-year-old in this SI, just look at his face, not his long hair, and then you look at him today. The face is the same.
Same, yep.
Granted, he's heavier and he doesn't have as much hair, but the face, that same face is there. You can see it.
And Mark just called him fat and bald.
I know he did. Yeah, Mr. Piggy there with no hair. Yeah, good job, Mark. John's not going to be on our show.
No, but he has that little smile. He has that little rice.
Oh, yeah. You got the same face, you porker.
Yeah, yeah. And that teeny little smile you got creeps me out.
Oh, 19th hole. Go.
Okay. This is from Kevin Wolfork. If the district attorney's office throughout the country spent as much time vigorously prosecuting criminals as has been spent trying to prosecute Dave Forbes, there would be less crime. I think what Forbes did was inexcusable. If the NHL made its penalties for flagrant stick violations stiffer, such violations would no longer occur. But it is up to the NHL, not the district's attorney's office. This is a far too dangerous precedent to set. Kevin Wolfork, Jacksonville, Florida, not taking it anymore.
Well,
Wow.
Kevin sounds angry.
Yeah, my celebrity voice impersonated.
Not good.
You know,
Not good.
yeah. I mean, if I wanted to read it, I could have read it in the if the district attorney's office throughout the country.
Nope,
just
that would be
yeah,
that would be the
didn't work.
wrong tone. You picked
Yeah.
the correct tone for
I
sure.
went with the tone.
So Bill went pissed off, and I'm going to end with something really sweet. Okay, we spoke about Michigan Athletic Director Don Canham, who was changing college sports by actually making money, and two people wanted to salute him for something else. They write, "We were pre-dental and pre-med students at the University of Michigan. We both had participated in track in high school and felt we had talent. Coach Don Canham gave us an audience that consisted of two questions. Which track events were we talking about, and what were our best times in each? After we had answered, he sat behind his desk smiling, asked what academic fields we were pursuing, and then said with a grin, 'Gentlemen, study hard, get into medical and dental school, and forget track. We have co-eds at the U of M who can do a lot better than either of you.' Canham is not only a superior AD, but a superior person." That's from D.B. Boyd, a dentist, and Ed Smith, a doctor, both from Grand Rapids. So
that's
some good advice from Canham, that's for sure.
That's great.
Isn't that great?
Yeah.
I love it.
Love that. Love that. Hey, next week, the Golden Bear, Jack Nicklaus on the cover of SI. He was on the cover of SI. You guys got to guess how many times the Golden Bear was on the cover?
16.
13.
23.
Wow.
Only two athletes were on it more.
A tiger?
Nope.
Muhammad Ali.
Muhammad and number
was
one all
thinking-
time,
Michael Jordan.
Michael Jordan and Muhammad
Oh,
Ali.
yeah. Yeah.
There you have it. Jordan,
Yeah.
Ali, and Nicholas. A pretty good trio there, and a pretty good trio here. For Bill and Mark, I am Scott, and we are past our prime.